attendance. We will bring the May 11th Planning Commission meeting to order.
Pacino,
Here.
Bull,
Here.
Heisler White,
Here.
Moody,
Here.
O'Toole,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
and Matamore is absent. So that's 6 present, 1 absent.
Okay, approval of agenda and minutes. Has everybody gotten the chance to look over this? If so, we can entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Okay, approved or moved and approved. Are there any changes or any edits to the agenda, staff? None. Meeting minutes. Entertain a motion if everyone has had an opportunity to look at it for the April 27th meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
You have a second? Yeah.
Second.
Second. Approved and seconded on to item 3. So citizen comments. This is specific to non-agenda related topics. We can't take any action on this. It's just any comments, anybody online. Okay, moving past that, we'll close citizen comments. Do we have any staff reports?
No, we don't.
Thank you. No staffs. Disclosures, ex parte communications. I will, as I always do with variance 26001 Prairie West Estates expansion. Christy Roberts is the applicant, and I personally within business, work with her a lot. I don't see it as a conflict. I'm not helping her on this, but if the commission feels otherwise, I will sit out if those are. Okay. Is there any other? No. Moving on, current planning projects. Old business, doesn't seem to be any new business. We will take plat 260005 paintbrush, first edition, 5th filing plat. So, Emma. Derek, take it away.
Sorry about the hair, Emma.
Sure. I'm sure you enjoyed taking that shot at me. I appreciate it. No. Emma is actually out of the country, so she's enjoying her time away. And so I'm going to use my extensive knowledge on this project, and we'll be presenting for Emma on the Paintbrush Edition, first edition, 5th filing final plat. This is a project that consists of 9 residential single-family lots on about 3 acres of property in the R1 zoning district. This is kind of located up at the north end of North 23rd Street. If you're familiar with the Coughlin Pole Mountain or the Paintbrush Edition subdivisions, it's up in that area. And this is this is the last final plat associated with that area up there, and kind of completes the road network, the sewer line, water line infrastructure in the area. Within the staff report, you'll see just a little bit of a history of kind of what's gone on. This project started back in 2013 as a preliminary plat, and then has continued forward even before that with the Coughlin Pole Mountain 3rd edition. The Paintbrush Edition plat was actually a replatting of a portion of the Coughlin Pole Mountain 3rd edition in order to align some streets and address some topography, as well as just some lot layout up in the area that you're seeing as part of this actual final plat here. As I mentioned, the property is all zoned R1. So all the lots associated within the final plat meet and conform with the requirements of the R1 zoning district. You're seeing the completion of the street layout in this area. It's extension of the streets in the area. If you look at the map that's included in your packet, Battle Street will continue over and connect into Buford Street, as well as the extension there of 23rd Street, just a small portion of it. Sidewalks, curbs, gutters, city standard streets will be incorporated across through the whole subdivision, providing access to all the lots. In this area too, we will note that it does comply with all the requirements of the approval that were associated with the preliminary plat. That's a essential component of approving a final plat. Secondly, the layout is in substantial conformance with the preliminary plat. We have reviewed the plans for this subdivision, and they are in compliance with all of Laramie municipal codes and standards. And all the public and private improvements will be secured through the improvement deferral agreement as required by code prior to city council approval. And that with this design and this layout, it does meet all the applicable design standards set forth in code. All plats, we do legal notice. This was published in the Laramie Boomerang, and letters were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet. To date, of the writing of this staff report, we had received no public comments. I did receive a public comment following the writing of this report. There was the property owner that's located adjacent to this site, just on North 23rd Street. Just had questions about where the alleyway was going to be going and what might happen with some of that space that's kind of located in that north of the alleyway. I had those discussions with him. We're going to stay in communication with him about some of the futures of that space. He was just interested in it. But aside from that, received no other public comments. Aside from that, we do recommend approval of the subdivision, and so would be happy to take any questions that the commission might have on this project, but it's a pretty straightforward plat kind of filling in the last area that's left on this. So,
Commission, any questions for Derek?
Derek, is there any problem with mud coming down off that escarpment?
you mean behind, so like
To the
the
north.
north of the lots that are on the north end? I mean, there is some slope there, but it's what's been coming off that hill forever.
Right.
And so that's kind of what the city has ownership of that property as well as the trail that's up on top.
Right.
And so, we've kind of taken done what we can to keep the water the same coming off of that. You'll see in the plat, there is an easement that's located along the back side of that for drainage. And so that would allow for any water that might come off there to kind of go onto that space. Based upon the topography, some of it runs kind of east and west there along the back lines, but then also is allowed to make it down the property line. So if you look in the plat, there's easements on the property lines, and then some of that water would go to the streets, depending upon each of the lots and where some of that water goes. But that's generally what happens with the water flow there.
So does some of the water flow across the lots, or does it get diverted? Does it get diverted west?
So generally speaking, some of the water goes both directions and then goes down between the houses. If you really, really want the detail, what I do know is the applicant and the applicant's engineer are available, and they probably could give you a little bit more detail on exactly where the water goes if you would like that.
Do you remember the issue we had was it Richards Park, where folks were they were objecting, I've forgotten what the issue was, but they didn't want additional building done because it was causing mud to flow through their property. Maybe a year ago?
Oh yeah,
So we're not in that kind of situation.
no, for the most part over here, we're not seeing as much water that was coming there.
Okay.
And so it's not something that we've had any concern with, at least at this point. So
Do we want to hear from the applicant?
the applicant is here, so yeah.
So yes.
I think that'd be good. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you
Warren
please-
Greaser with Roston Development. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
You want to ask your question again to the applicant?
So actually, Derek,
That-
is there a way to show the first page of the construction drawings?
Yes, the plat's the most accessible thing really quickly.
So that doesn't really show the ditch that's behind there. And it doesn't show the contour lines.
We could possibly email it to Nancy really quick and we could pull it up. Give us 1 second.
Okay.
Is it on the agenda?
I guess in the meantime, what I would say is, I think the concern on the other side, Richards Park side, is development going in above those homes.
That's right. That's right. That's
And
right. That's what it-
here you have that trail system and open space
right.
owned by the city that's above these homes, and so there won't be
No funny stuff.
additional water coming off.
Okay.
It'll just be what's historic. And I believe when the trail went in, the grading was done in such a way that everything on the north of the trail drains that direction and everything south of the trail drains south.
Okay.
And so it's actually less land that's draining down that slope than historical.
I used to live in that neighborhood, and it was like when we had a really heavy rainfall, it was would get pretty muddy.
Yeah.
Any other questions while we're waiting for
Yeah.
that to show up on the screen?
Sending it over.
I'm online.
You can go to the next page. Okay. It's pretty faint up there, but if you can see, there's a right where her cursor is, where it says north. Existing north drainage ditch. So that is a ditch right there that runs all the way down behind all the homes that are up there existing, and it comes into Greentop Street further down in the subdivision. So that catches a bunch of water that comes off the hill and carries it down into the storm sewer drainage system and into that pond at Reynolds Street. Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Mr. Greaser?
I have a weird question.
I don't know if we can entertain weird questions, but we'll try.
You people need weird questions, and even more of the planning people need weird questions. Is Buford Street discontinuous? Do I remember correctly? But east of this area, because this is where Buford Street ends, right? But isn't there another piece of Buford Street to the east? Or am I hallucinating?
Reluctant to say you're hallucinating, but so
I did have mushrooms for lunch.
yeah, the history behind that is Buford Street was on the major street plan and was planned to extend to the east
Right.
through this property. During the platting of Coughlin Pole Mountain Third Edition, there was a lot of discussion about how we were going to get over that ridge line with a major street without essentially cutting it all down and,
Right.
and essentially destroying that kind of bluff, basically.
Right.
Not only did the cost and all the logistics play a role, but also the desire to protect that ridge line was a large portion of the conversation that happened in the community. And then through the major street amendments to the major street plan, we truncated Buford Street at that location and essentially stopped that east-west connector from going
Right.
anywhere
Okay.
further. The other portion of that conversation which I think is important is even once we got it across this portion of the property, essentially to 30th Street, there was some pretty major roadblocks in terms of physical topography of extending Buford even past 30th Street as well. And so the benefit of putting Buford and east-west across there, we just felt like really wasn't worth what we were getting at in terms of the spacing and things like that that existed within the area. And so now what you'll have is asphalt lane, which is just north of Sierra Sky, which will provide another east-west connection. And so that's kind of why it's not there, why it stops into the local subdivision.
Okay, I'm just feeling sorry for Buford Street since it got truncated.
Okay.
That has Freudian significance.
It was during the original platting of Sierra Sky that all happened.
Yeah.
Was crazy.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment associated with this? Thank you, Mr. Gracer. Any public comment? Nancy, is there anybody online?
No one online.
All right, well, do we have any discussion among the commission about this? If not, entertain a motion. I think we can entertain a motion now, right? Okay.
I move to recommend that the city council approve paintbrush first edition fifth final plat F 26-0005 based on findings of fact and conclusions of law.
We have a second.
You can second. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Nancy, will you give us a roll call vote on that, please?
Buccino.
Aye.
Bull.
Aye.
Heisler Wright. Moody.
Aye.
O'Toole.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
And Madam Moore is absent. So we have 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. On to the conditional use permit CUP 26-0001-1721 Park Avenue, the Vital Elementary School parking lot renovation. Philip.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, members of the Commission. Before you tonight is the conditional use permit application for the proposed Vital Elementary parking lot renovation at 1721 East Park Avenue. If you recall, last year, the school district came forth with a similar request for the same site, CUP 25-12, in which the conversion of the school from the site from a school, from Vital Elementary School to administrative offices associated with the school district was applied for and approved last year by this commission. And the reason that this is before you this evening is because this use requires a conditional use permit because it is located in a R1 neighborhood. That was the case last year, and that is the case now because further expansion of the administrative use is being asked for with this addition of a parking lot, an off-street parking lot where, if you remember, in 2025, this board granted the conditional use with on-street parking sufficing as what was needed for the site. But further funding came, and now they're able to do an off-street parking lot, which to us as staff is moving the site further into conformance and having less of an impact on the neighborhood. So a little background there since it was pretty recent. But looking at the plan, the proposed parking configuration provides 48 on-street parking spaces, including an ADA space and a van accessible space. So that's an adequate amount of parking that's required. I think total the requirement for the site is 50 spaces, but given that we do have 27 spaces on street that can be accounted for, we feel comfortable in the size of that parking lot being expanded. So major component of the project obviously is the removal of the existing playground and replacing it with this parking lot, right? So The total impervious surface that's being added with all this is 1,874 square feet when all said and done, which falls under the 2,000 square feet that would trigger a type 3 site plan, think full site plan conformance. So they are just under that, and therefore type 1 site plan will suffice for this site. So with that, I think what you'll see in the site plan is improved landscaping on that southern side, which provides as a buffer and softens the parking lot. There are some landscape islands in there that are landscaped that you'll see. So yeah, as mentioned, we feel it will improve the overall appearance of that southern side of the elementary school. Another important aspect, given that it is R1, it is very close to existing neighborhoods, is the lighting plan for the parking lot is going to be lighted. However, the photometric plan clearly shows that 0 foot candles are going to be observed at the property line, so we don't expect any spillover from those light fixtures in the parking lot. And pedestrian accessibility improvements are shown on the site plan as well through the parking lot from the southern side there. So I do have in your staff report before you all the specific aspects of the site plan broken up, such as ingress, egress, off-street, or I'll just go over them briefly to address each one. Ingress and egress there will be provided to the proposed parking lot via the existing approach and a new approach from South 18th Street. They'll both be one way, so there will definitely be a defined circulation of the parking lot, which we feel will support vehicular and pedestrian circulation. Safety, off-street parking, I already went over. 48 space parking lot there. Off-site impacts, economic, noise, glare, odor effects. I mentioned the lighting one. We don't expect any other ones. As you all know, this was an elementary school for many years. So we actually see it going in the opposite direction of intensity of use. With being an administrative office, you have far less trips going in. You will, however, have larger meetings there from time to time. We've been informed trainings as well as some board meetings perhaps will be held there. So, you know, but as mentioned, 48 off-street parking spaces, as well as an added 27 in that neighborhood, we feel is adequate for those types of uses. Refuse and service areas, there is a new trash enclosure being proposed on site, which you'll see, which is definitely an improvement from before. Utilities aren't being affected. Screening and buffering, I mentioned the landscaping improvements that are required as per code for parking lot perimeter landscaping. There will be a sign on the southern side of the lot, and we will review on the Park Avenue entrance. We will be reviewing that to make sure it meets setbacks and all the code requirements. But we've been told it's going to be a nice monument sign, which we don't perceive any issues there. So then moving on to the specific location, if it's appropriate for the specific location related to intensity and bulk. I've already mentioned this before. We see, as the planning staff sees this as moving into the direction of a less intense use for an R1 neighborhood, which we are in favor of. Public health, safety, and convenience. Again, I've mentioned this, the parking lot is going to improve all of that. We feel like with additional sidewalk access to the building. Setbacks, walls, landscaping, buffer yards, everything I've mentioned, those that are applicable. And so other city departments did not have issue with this or did not provide comments. We did receive 3 public comments that you all have received prior to the meeting because it was advertised as required through the Laramie Boomerang mailings as well as the development sign on site. So it is staff's conclusion that the application meets all of the required findings for approval with the standard conditions included, and staff recommends approval of the project. And I know there's 2 representatives from the school district as well to answer any questions, and I'm glad to answer any as well.
Okay, commission, any questions for Philip?
I had one question. So is there a staff recommendation related to this issue related to the flagpole? And maybe we can ask the school district representatives whether they need the flagpole. They are not, because I guess it's not technically related to the parking lot use, but if it looked like the conditions were pulled from the other one too and restated. So if it's an appropriate time to consider the noise that the flagpole makes when it's not being used. I just wanted to raise it and be responsive to that public comment.
Indeed, I would defer to the applicant as to how the flagpole is going to be handled because, yeah, the public comment was that it was like banging in the wind. And so it was kind of a constant noise that I don't know if that's going to be addressed or not. I mean, as far as is the flagpole, I believe is staying, right? So,
Yeah, by all means, please.
yeah.
Randy Wilkson, Chief Operations Officer for Albany County School District. All schools are supposed to have a flagpole at them. That's part of the statutes that's coming out of the state. So yes, that would stay. We could look at, if there's a different place to put it. I'm sure because we have not been flying a flag on there because it has not been open, that it's been making more noise than normal because it just sits there and rattles the against the pole. But at this time, no, we are not considering taking the flagpole out.
And so is it still considered a school? It's a school resource center, right?
That is correct. So school resource centers, I believe, going back, the reason there isn't one on Grand Avenue is because of the proximity to Grand Avenue, if I remember right. But that was 20 years ago that was, and that's why there's not one at the Grand Avenue. But if I could present it to the Board of Education, but I don't think that at this time we would consider removing a flagpole.
And the suggestion was there was a recognition that there might be a use for flag, that it might be too expensive to remove the flagpole. But I think the request was, could there be a consideration if the flagpole is not going to be used? Could the ropes and the things that are making the noise be taken down, even if the flagpole isn't?
Yeah, if it's not going to be used any longer, if the council deems that there won't be, or the school board deems that there won't be a flagpole there, we will remove the whole flagpole.
Thank you. Any other questions for Philip or the applicant? Go ahead.
Might be for Phillips, might be for the applicant, but I'll just ask and you can decide.
You're muted on your mic. There you go.
I guess I'm a little bit confused about the need for the parking lot and the chain of events that led to it. Because like you said, when we voted, they said that there was no need, that parking was adequate at 27 spaces. But now you've also said that infrequently more spaces would be needed, but it should be less use. So why build such a large parking lot if it's expected to be used infrequently?
Chair, through you to Counselor, I would say, or Commissioner, I'm sorry. I would say with the advent of this being funded is why you're seeing this application. So the school district would have included this in the original CUP that you heard last year if they had had funding for it, which they did not. So they asked whether the on-street parking spaces could be adequate. And we went through a minor administrative modification where we mailed everyone letters whether they were okay with, the school district reducing the amount of parking required and then allowing that to all be on-street parking, right? And that was only done because they didn't have funding to do off-street. Their desire always was to have an off-street parking lot. As staff, yes, I see your point as far as it's working right now under the current conditional use, presumably. However, with an off-street parking lot, you're definitely moving towards conformance, which we can support because, off-street parking definitely reduces the impact to the neighborhood. And that's something that is supported and actually required, right? It was actually outside of the lane that, well, they had to go through the process to have a reduction of parking and to have that on street. So, but it is up to this commission to discuss that as to the necessity of this off-street parking lot. We, however, as staff are in favor because it's moving the site further into conformance of current code.
Are there other pending funding requests or needs that would then require another conditional use permit that we should be mindful of that may come down the pipe in the future? Or is this the extent of their foreseen use?
Chair, through you, I would defer to Mr. Wilkerson on that.
At this time, we don't foresee any other changes to this property. One of the reasons we put this through was we had several of our residents that live around it came and talked and asked the question of why we didn't go with this. Why didn't you go with something like this? And we said, with being 2 Wednesdays a month is when this is going to be busy, potentially busy. We don't know how many people's going to show up for a school board meeting. We did find funding for this to go, but at this time there are no other additions coming to the Vital Elementary Central Office project.
But there could be.
Through the chair, yeah, there always could be. I can't tell you that the next Board of Education won't want different changes. I can't tell you that. If the board directs the superintendent to do something different, then that comes down to me, and we make the application to the city. But through this board, I don't see any other changes have to come through the addition and go with this. Ooh.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Chris.
Is there any chance that the parking lot could be used for, let's say, Freedom has a birthday when Washington Park is swamped and parking is at a premium, that the school district would say, hey, if you want to park your car in our lot, we're not doing anything this weekend, go ahead and use it?
Through the chair, yes, that happens all the time on our Grand Avenue for football games and everything else. So yes, I would see that being a useful event. There's nothing, going on a Saturday in our schools. So yeah, that's pretty common in all of our schools where people come in. I'm going to use an example of over at Slade Elementary when they were doing food trucks. People would come in, park in our parking lots, the food trucks also, and they would do the same thing. So I wouldn't see any problems with that.
So if there was like some sign that said public parking allowed on weekends, that would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll do the signage, but yes, it's cool to be in there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Philip, I do have one more question for you. Looking over these the plans have a note on it that says 95% construction set. They're not stamped. That's a comment. We're supposed to see stamped sets of plans that come before public hearings and whatnot.
Chair, yes. So it is associated with the site plan, in which we do have the full set. So I did not catch that this is a different version. So I would defer to the applicant as to why there is a discrepancy there. But for all intensive purposes, what we've reviewed and what we've approved with the conditions of approval, it should be enough with what you're seeing in the site plan to approve the conditional use, in which the site plan itself it's contingent on the approval of this, right?
Okay, we'll continue this discussion offline a little bit because state statute requires different, but as long as it's going to be substantially same and what you're looking at had a stamp or it's there.
I just had one last question for Philip. An issue in one of the comments was raised about the ownership of the slip of land across the street. Can you address whether that is city property or part of the school district's property?
No, Chair, through you, that is school district property as well. So it's maintained by the school district, yeah.
Then I am curious from the applicant what the plans are for maintaining that site, because I think it was actively used by the school. This maybe is a natural area. So could we get some information about the maintenance of that? It just goes to the concerns about the neighboring property owners, which it sounds like you're sensitive to anyway. So.
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, great news on that. Actually, part of what is going into Vital is what we call our Transition Academy, which is students on a graduate or non-graduate track from age 18 to 21. We will be doing some things in this building with them. They have asked if they could take care of that land over there. They want to do some wildflowers. They want to be able to cultivate them, to cut them, bring them, and share them down at the farmers market and stuff. So yes, I think we have some good plans going forward with that over there, and they will be taking care of that. And like I said, they are the 18 to 21-year-olds. There's probably usually about 8 to 12 in the school at a time, and so they'll be taking care of that land over there for us. Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Donald.
So comment on the question. I think this is a big improvement. It will be a big improvement. This area looks pretty sad right now and pretty forlorn. And I think this will be a big improvement, especially with some of the landscaping. So I'm kind of happy to see that. Related to Sharon's question about landscaping, these are going to be little islands around the parking lot if this goes forward. Will that be xeriscaped? Or will it be, is it possible to xeriscape it?
Chair, through you. So our code does require that a percentage of the landscape islands are living material, but they could be made, that could be met by the trees that are planted in there, and the rest could be rock mulch.
Right.
Which I think would probably be close to xeriscaped. However, all of them are being, all of the islands have irrigation going to them.
Oh, they will.
currently,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I just was wondering, it could be difficult. And I have a question that's just related to this in general. It's from Mr. Wilkinson. On the north side of the building, do to use Philip's term, rock mulch. I'd never heard that phrase before. It's a different kind of mulch. What's happening on the north side of the building with all those rocks?
That was under the first cup and was approved by the city for the amount of trees and rock that we put in there. That was approved landscaping.
So that's the final deal, and then
Yep.
some lights will go in on that side of the building.
Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess, do we have any public comment regarding this item before us? Anybody in the room, anybody online? Okay, going once, going twice. I guess we'll close public comment, discussion amongst the commission. If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve a conditional use permit for the Beidel Elementary School parking lot renovation associated with the approved School Resource Center, ACSD1 administrative building within an OR1 single-family residential zoning district located at 1721 Park Avenue based on findings of fact and conclusions of law and subject to all staff's recommended conditions.
Do we have a second? Moved and seconded. Nancy, will you give us a roll call, please?
Patino,
Aye.
Bull, Heisler White, Moody,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
and Matamore absent. That's 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That conditional use permit was approved. Thank you. Any long range planning projects discussion? No. Okay, we need to variances, we adjourn as planning commission and re-adjourn as board of adjustment. We need a motion to go through that.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. We are now sitting as board of adjustment. And the first item before us here is the variance VAR -26-0001 Prairie West Estates expansion. Joseph, good evening.
Good evening, Chair. Small procedural thing. I do believe that for the Board of Adjustments, we do need to swear in.
If we have any, yes, if we have, what do we call them? Witnesses, I suppose. We need to come up, state your name, and what is the proper terminology that I need to use?
Yeah, just swearing in of the witnesses.
Okay,
So
just-
anyone that is prepared to testify, Chair, would be appropriate to ask them to swear in.
Okay, so anybody prepared or willing to testify, do you state and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You can just say yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Joseph.
Chair Commission, tonight we have before you a variance for Prairie West Estates expansion. This is a current mobile home park and one that is not utilizing all of its properties, which is something that is very different than what you all are very used to seeing at this point. The project is located at 2260 Franklin Street. Just to orient you all, that's to the west of the Jimmy Carter subdivision, which is on the corner of Franklin and Colorado. So it kind of sits there between Colorado Avenue, then it goes the Jimmy Carter subdivision, and then this this manufactured home park or community. This is within the R2M district. If you remember your use chart, a manufactured home community is almost exclusively allowed in this zoning district, alone. So there can be this is often an issue that we see, that it's not in the correct zoning district. This one is within the correct zoning district. So I did want to get that out of the way from the very beginning. So this application is for 4 separate sections of code. I do want to point out that when we started this process out, the applicant had only asked for one, but through our pre-application meeting, we did note that there might have been other issues that were not addressed in this. And our hope is to always bring this before you for a variance once, so that the applicant doesn't have to continuously come up here to address this for each little thing. So we are hoping that everything has been addressed sufficiently. So on December 22nd, planning staff met with the applicant and the owner of Prairie West Estates to discuss a proposed expansion to the existing manufactured home community. The community was initially approved through a conditional use permit on April 18th, 2006, and later modified through a variance approved on December 20th, 2006. I do want to point out that our code has changed significantly since that time. Conditional uses, for example, had to go before city council at that time. And so they went before this body as well as city council to get this initial one approved. Now we don't have to do that. You guys are the deciding body on CUPs and on variances, so we don't have to do that today. 2010 was the time that we implemented the Unified Development Code. So as the time line suggests, what the applicant had to abide by in 2006 was different than what it is today. And so some of the things that you'll see on here are missing from that park. Doesn't mean that the park looks bad right now. We don't have very many issues with it, but the standards that we implement and require of anyone building new buildings is the same, and it includes the manufactured home parks. Going into the four separate requests for relief, the first one is for the area, the minimum size of a lot that can hold a manufactured home community. Within code, it does say that manufactured home communities need to be a minimum of 20 contiguous acres. This is to relieve some of the issues that we've seen historically, which is communities bisected by public roads that require setbacks that are pretty heavy. It is trying to bring manufactured home communities into current status. This particular park is really on that line. It's almost 220, and if worse comes to worse, a minor administrative modification can be applied in this case. We did just say to the applicant, for ease of this process, to just put it into this variance if it was approved, or if you guys wanted to make a motion to modify 20 contiguous or slightly less than 20 contiguous acres was not something that the planning department had any major heartburn about, and there is a process to approve that outside of this. Going into the other ones, we do kind of set a harder line in order to make sure that all standards are implemented uniformly. One of those included the site perimeter landscaping. This is one of the uses that has pretty high levels of site perimeter landscaping. It is our L4 perimeter landscaping, which is our highest level that you can have. This is predominantly because you're having a higher intensity use around a lot of other generally lower intensity uses. So we can create that buffer space and screening that includes higher setback requirements and more units of landscaping. But it is generally calculated the same way, which is the linear square foot of that side, determining how many units are required. The next one is that all manufactured home communities shall be screened from adjacent development or public streets with a masonry wall or solid material fence at least 6 feet in height and adequate plantings. So that kind of goes along with the landscaping requirement. This is not something that we see in very many of our communities here. I will say even in subdivisions in other communities, some of these requirements are there. When these standards were approved, this was one of the ones that either the planning commission as well as city council at the time required or did not strike from the code. The last one is related to detached individual storage rooms with an area of no more than 150 square feet. We do require storage in things like multifamily units as well as manufactured home communities. At the time, I think that there was a real concern about seeing everybody's stuff around their lots and, you know, the amount of storage that was available to them within their specific units. That's why this is here. The no more then was to make sure that we didn't start getting excessive amounts of storage and perhaps some questions about whether or not this was what the primary use was, whether it was storage unit use or not. I will say that the 20 contiguous acres is probably pretty standard for the amount of amenities that are required there. There's certain parking requirements, there's landscaping requirements, there's storage requirements, and that's very likely why it was a fairly high number. It can be more than that, it can be less than that, but it did feel like it was worthwhile to mention that this first one, the 20 contiguous acres, is one that can be approved through a minor administrative modification. However, we figured that this was the easiest way to bundle it up and bring it before you. Going into the findings of fact for this variance, as you all know, there are 6 findings, and all 6 of those findings have to be met in order to approve a variance. The first one is whether or not there are special circumstances or conditions fully described in the board's findings that are peculiar to the land or building for which the adjustment is sought and do not apply generally to land or building in the neighborhood and have not resulted from any act of the applicant subsequent to the adoption of the code, such as irregularity, narrowness, shallowness of lots, or exceptional topography. If you go out to the site, it's a fairly normal site, fairly flat. There is a drainage ditch currently there was part of the original design of the site to deal with stormwater. So generally the planning division found that no special circumstances or conditions existed that would justify regulatory relief. I do want to mention that there is a utility easement within there, and I believe it's a distribution line, a water line that leads to a facility to the south of that. So there is a utility easement on site, not in the normal location. Generally, you see these on the farthest edges of the property. This one is set in a little bit more than the others. The circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application of the provisions of code would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of such land or building. The planning division found that strict application of the code would not deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the property. The property is currently developed and functioning as a manufactured home community. An expansion of the use remains feasible under compliant designs. Now, as we add to it, we would require some of those amenities that we've previously talked about that are not currently on site and were not required at the time. So it would eat into some of the spaces that are there, but it doesn't render the site undevelopable. It just limits the amount of spaces that can be on the site. The next question is related to solar and wind power. We rarely go over that in the same one. The same instance applies tonight. It's not applicable for this specific project. The next one, the granting of the adjustment is necessary for reasonable use thereof, and the proposed adjustment as granted is the minimum adjustment that will accomplish the purpose. Planning division found that the requested variance is not necessary to allow reasonable use of the property. While the applicant has indicated a desire to accommodate storage rooms and additional vehicle storage, these elements can be designed to comply with applicable development standards. As such, the requested adjustment is not considered the minimum necessary. The next one, granting the variance is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of code and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. I think, as we've discussed before, a lot of these standards is to buffer a pretty high intensity of use from surrounding uses. We have residential uses kind of surrounding this property, while we do have a county property to the north, as well as a fairly old, fairly dilapidated manufactured home community. Our plan is to develop to current standards and mitigate some of the intensity of uses for any future development in the area. As you know, if there was any redevelopment of B-Bar B, which is the manufactured home community to the north, we would require them to come into compliance if they reach the threshold to have to do that. Finally, the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located, nor substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use of, or development of adjacent properties. I think as far as altering the essential character of the neighborhood, the use is already there. It will just be a bigger use. It will be a more intense use. And it's likely that we don't know what will be built, if anything ever, on the properties to the north. And so it's a little bit hard to say if it would impact those developments. So legal note, kind of in conclusion, legal notice was published in the Boomerang on March 27th, 2026. If you all remember, this was brought before you all last month, and we postponed it due to attendance. We did not need to republish that in the newspaper because we postponed it to a date certain. Letters were sent out to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. So I did print off and give you guys a letter that, or an email that was sent to us. I did forward this on before the last planning commission meeting. But it was pointed out that I did not include it in the staff report, so I wanted to make sure it was printed off and given to you all. I did have other people inquiring about this, specifically related to stormwater drainage in the area and any improvements. I will just say that our engineering department did look at this. There are some deficiencies in stormwater in West Laramie that are pretty well known, and this is not an exception to that rule. In conclusion, the planning division does recommend denying the variance based on findings of denial. However, if there was one that we would be okay with, it would be that first one related to the area. But yeah, I stand for questions.
Okay, just I got a question. If we don't approve this, the existing, or if we do or don't approve this, does it affect anything on the existing mobile home park, the part that that's kind of cross-hatched in the site plan?
Just a point of clarification, are you meaning like if
brought
they
up to current standards, or is that kind of going to be ignored as is?
It is pretty much going to be ignored. We're not going to make them push back any units or anything like that. But yeah.
Okay.
That was my question too. And I mean, I understand the rationale for doing that. But it's all one parcel, right? And so is this an amendment to, or is it like a different and separate parcel? Because I'm just thinking of the general principle that that you're essentially grandfathered in to circumstances that change, unless you then propose a change and it triggers the requirement for a variance. But why doesn't that requirement for a variance apply to the whole parcel?
Right. Well, those were approved part of their conditional use and variance previously. And so we had determined that, it had already been approved, this section of it. And it would be more heavy-handed and not within what we usually do. Now, I will say, usually we don't see a manufactured home park partially completed, right? They're usually all complete. We don't really see very many manufactured home parks at all in the community, and certainly not new or expanding ones. And so this is somewhat of a new area for us. But that was the main reason why we didn't pursue bringing everything into full compliance at that point.
And other than the items that they're requesting a variance from, the 4 items, the new development will be in compliance with the current codes as they exist now. Is that correct?
Chair, through you. Yeah, we have not gotten a full design of the project yet. We were going through the variance process prior to designing the entire project, but yes, whether these are approved, well, if these are approved, then they will not be included. If it is approved, then any design would have to incorporate all these and any other specifications within code.
Any other questions? Chris?
Joe, the land that's adjacent to the county, does the city make any exceptions to, let's say, landscape buffering when you're adjacent to undeveloped land in the county, or is it we're going to have fencing and we're going to maintain the buffer adjacent to the undeveloped county land?
Chair, through you. Within this section of code, which is specific to manufactured home communities, there's not a differentiation. In the landscaping section that goes off of zoning types and adjacent property types, whether it's in the county or city, there is a difference. So we are looking at the use specific regulations for this specific use, so manufactured home communities. For every other use out there, we're looking at this landscaping specific standards that goes off of the surrounding either zoning or road types or those sorts of things. So to answer, I might have just over answered your question, so my apologies. But in this one, no, there is not a specific exemption for being close to the county.
Thanks.
So,
Question for the applicant or the person advocating for the applicant.
okay. Any other questions for Joseph here? Okay, if our applicant would like to come forward, and we have some questions for you, it sounds like. And Christy, please state your name.
Christy Roberts with Dwell. I'm here representing the applicant this evening. Should I speak first?
Please go ahead.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Even after hearing staff's report, our team continues to believe that this request meets the variance criteria when the full context of the property is considered. First, the special circumstances. I think it's important to acknowledge the unique circumstances of this property, which Joseph even alluded to. It was lawfully established in 2006 as a 17.4 acre site. It was originally approved for up to 125 spaces well before the 2010 code introduced the 20 acre minimum. The combination of this pre-existing approval, partial build out, and post-2010 regulatory changes creates a circumstance that is unique to this property. I don't even think there are any 20 acre mobile home parks in Laramie. I did look up ones that adjoin the county and there aren't any, so. These site-specific constraints were not created by the applicant, and I think they satisfy the requirement for special circumstances. Second, reasonable use. Reasonable use should include the ability to complete a development that was previously approved and initiated in good faith. The standard is not whether some use remains, it's whether the code creates a practical difficulty in achieving a permitted use. Applying today's standards to prevent completion of that development effectively imposes the 2010 code retroactively, preventing the property from achieving its originally intended and entitled use. So I think that clearly meets the reasonable use standard. Third, the minimum necessary adjustment. The variances we've requested are targeted and specific to the constraints of this site. I do want to mention that the landscape buffer yard width on the north and the east are code compliant. I don't know if they're compliant points wise, but the width is. So the requirements prior would meet that width requirement. We're only requesting for the reduced buffer adjoining the existing mobile home park and unincorporated land. I do also want to note that the L2 buffer that we're proposing exceeds the L1 buffer of the zoning district. And we're going to maintain that L4 buffering on all other boundaries. Strict application of the code in this instance does not achieve better compliance. It creates competing requirements that can't be reasonably satisfied within the constraints of the site. The required parking and storage that we want to provide to meet the current provisions of code and reduce unregulated outdoor storage don't feasibly work with the 20-foot buffer yard on the west. And fourth, harmony with the code in the neighborhood. This is not new, it's not incompatible, it's an existing residential use expanding within its intended zoning district. We think that the separation between the two manufactured home community would artificially divide like uses, not protect them. We think our proposal instead promotes a cohesive integration, improved site organization, and better living conditions for the residents. And that's fully consistent with the intent of our code. So in closing, I think at the end of the day, we all came here for the same reason. It's to make Laramie a better place to live, work, and play. That's why you are volunteering your time on a beautiful sunny afternoon. It's what I've dedicated my career to. Our code is important, but no code can anticipate every unique circumstance or every site-specific challenge. That's exactly why the variance process exists and why these decisions are entrusted to you. The question before the board is not simply whether the code exists, but whether strict application of the code, in this case, produces the best outcome for the property, the neighborhood, and the community as a whole. Does this request improve the site? Does it support housing in Laramie, which is desperately needed, functionality, and long-term investment in our community? Ultimately, does it make Laramie better? Does it make it worse? We believe the proposal results in a better outcome for the property and for Laramie. The findings can be made. We respectfully request your approval. And I do have a handout here that kind of simplifies what we're asking in a more cohesive form. Yep. Thank you. Any questions I can answer for you?
Okay. I get one. Oh, yeah, we need one more. Sorry. I misspoke. Okay, questions for the applicant? So.
And Ms. Roberts, thank you for the handout. Would denial of the variance kill the expansion?
I don't have the answer to that. The owner would have to evaluate the cost feasibility of that. So I don't have to pay the bill.
It does raise an interesting question of if, you know, something was approved years ago, I think this is what, 15, 16 years ago. Does that entitle the property owner to turn back the clock in terms of the evolving standards of property design or property standards? Because if it's 16 years, is 20 years okay? Or 30 years? Or 50 years?
We are at 20 years.
It's 20 years.
But I think that the variance that we've asked for is very specific. We are complying with the minimum lot size, the separation of units, the roadway widths, the storage, the off-street parking. Like we're plan on complying with the majority of that section. These particular ones that we've asked for a variance for, they reduce the functionality of the site. So one of the new requirements is 150 square feet of camper and large vehicle parking. Well, the original plan in 2006 didn't have that requirement. And so in order for us to meet that, and, you know, they conflict.
Chris. Ms. Roberts, I thought there was language in your write-up that said that you were going to provide the 150 square feet of storage.
That's what we'd like to do, yes.
And so I was under the impression that the west boundary, which is reducing the buffer strip, that it was going to be used for additional storage space and parking. And so that the 150 square foot is integrated into the minimum lot sizes and all the things that you can provide that without the large buffer.
We can provide the on-site storage units. So that's a different requirement than the oversized parking. It's the oversized parking requirement that we want to use that buffer for. And also because this developer already has a mobile home park, he believes that most residents need some additional storage area.
So it's kind of an extra.
It would be an amenity,
it's an
to their community. Yep.
And for, I mean, for each one of these lots, there's room for a vehicle, I assume.
Right.
It's just
the
Wyoming way of having multiple vehicles and a big old truck.
Camper.
Right, Donald?
It's a camper.
Right. And so trying to accommodate the lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Yes, based on experience of the existing development, right? Based on what's already occurring. So.
Okay, thank you. One other question. So I sort of have heard some things that there is a desire for continuity or communication with I guess what's called the B mobile home. I mean, why wouldn't those residents desire a fence and a large buffer for their privacy of their mobile home? I don't know that it's any different than it being next to single family residences that, you know, they don't want to see a mobile home park next to them.
Yeah, I mean,
visually.
I'm gonna make a huge assumption of why that fence and separation is in the code, but I believe it's to separate the mobile home park use from other uses, not to create a cohesive community. Right? If somebody wants to create a cohesive community, it wouldn't be codified, right? They could say, oh, I want to put up a fence, and you put up a fence. But it's in the code for some reason other than creating a cohesive community. It's for separation of uses.
Yeah, anyways, thanks.
There was one specific comment, public comment that was submitted by somebody who says they live in a trailer court and they would value the landscaping. And I think that I guess my question to that point was, if I'm reading the site plan right, the buffer, the compliant buffer does exist and is being put in place on the other side to give the existing homes within this parcel that open space versus the built space.
Right.
And so what was the reason for putting it on up against the B-bar?
Putting what up against
The
B-bar?
reduced buffer, where you're asking
Oh,
for the variance is because you don't have that landscaping as a buffer on the
Okay.
west side, but you do on the east side.
Yeah, so actually there is a constraint on that west side, and it's the water line easement that Joseph mentioned. We can't obviously build anything other than a road or driveway over that. And there's not enough room to the west to put mobile home parks or mobile homes of current, configurations over there anyway. So in order to utilize that space efficiently, we wanted to put the oversized parking there because that will fit if the landscaping buffer yard is reduced. So, does that answer your question?
Yes.
I've got one question for you on the screening on the west side. On this handout that you gave us, code requirement says it's a solid fence requirement. The proposed says that it's modified between similar uses and the result is a context sensitive. What does that exactly mean? What are you planning to do in that, on that west side for like a buffer fence or a screening?
We just plan on doing landscaping compliant with the L2 buffer yard, so not a fence.
So landscaping, not a
Landscaping, not a fence. Yep. And it's just context specific because it's specific to the actual situation of that west side, which is adjoining unincorporated and similar use.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I'm curious if you know the answer, but what would be the annual revenue difference between planning, going through with your plan as is versus if you followed the current code compliant, or if you made your code compliance? Like, how many fewer sites would you have if you followed all of the codes versus how many sites you have planned now? Would it be a reduction of like 10% of revenue or 20% to follow the codes? Do you know?
I don't know. I didn't calculate that out. So it would be that area of well, it would be multiple things in this situation.
Right.
Because it would render the land west of the water easement pretty much useless. Maybe we could do some parallel parking. I don't even know. And then the other reduction would be the requirement of the oversized vehicle square footage. So those would be the two biggest things. I don't know that percentage or number of sites. So, sorry.
So there's no, the 150 square feet for the parking, that's not included in any of these sites?
No,
Or it's
there's
just a
a
much reduced
there's a
amount?
requirement in the code for an additional square footage off outside of the lots. So it can't be on the lots, or it doesn't count if it's on the lots for oversized vehicles. There is on parking on the lots included for the residents, but it would be additional parking within the community, but not on your individual lot for a camper, a trailer, a oversized vehicle. That is part of the code now. It was not in 2000.
Is it 66 spaces? Is that right?
No, it's like 300 square feet per 2 lots or something. It's some random.
So you've suggested 109 spaces currently.
So the variance indicated that 109 spaces would fit in to the area that they've designed. The previous variance was for 125 spaces.
So 125 spaces would meet the code right now?
I'm
Or
sorry,
no?
I might have missed part of the conversation because I was looking up like the differences between the previous one approved in 2006 versus
Right, sorry.
the lot, how many lots there were.
Yeah.
Are you talking about,
Exactly right.
are you talking about parking space requirements, or are you talking about the spaces for units?
If we have to include the 150 square feet per space, how many more spaces do they lose? And, you know, what the revenue there is, by not being able to put so many lots in one. I'm not phrasing this very well.
It was the originally approved was
With
125 units, and we've proposed
109.
9. So we're losing 16 unit spaces to meet current code, and that's with an approved variance.
Okay,
So we would lose even more.
yes, that's the
Yes.
number I'm looking for, sorry.
Okay. Thank
How many
you.
more you would lose, but that was good, thank you. We don't know.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
What is your view of, is this one single parcel that includes the existing? It is.
Yes.
The part in
It's
that,
all owned by the same owner and it's
Right.
one parcel.
right,
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I think that's all, Christy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this? Any online? Nancy, anybody? Okay. Okay, well, we'll close public comment unless, is there any other comment in the room? No. Okay. Discussion among the commission.
Well, just to remind folks, Joe talked about it a couple of times, but if we were to deny, they would still be able to, with the 20 acre, they've got a way to make that to keep developing. The variance, we denied this variance, it doesn't shut down the
Right, it
they're
would
not
just-
20 acres.
Right, it would ultimately reduce the number of units they could put on, it sounds like. Which is interesting that we're discussing reducing units when on another meeting in a couple weeks or at some point, we'll just be discussing how Laramie has a housing shortage. So yeah, I guess if there's any other discussion, if there's not any other discussion, I'll entertain a motion or more discussion.
I guess I make one comment, you know, thinking through the assessment that was done. And also include some of the comments that were made, you know, item number A that does talk about special circumstances and uniqueness of the situation probably does warrant a little bit of discussion, whether or not we agree which planning division that no special circumstances or conditions exist that would justify regulatory relief. To me, that's probably one of the bigger ones in our discussion, whether or not we agree or disagree with that finding based on everything that's been shared.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because it's been approved previously throughout time and then code changed in the middle of the development and now we're in a way trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, and that's the piece that's troubling me. I do feel like that the proposed findings of fact and the conclusion of law that have been offered by the applicant do give a potential basis for approving rather than denying, because we do have to have those findings of fact and conclusions of law. But I am troubled by the argument that just because it was approved before, that they should have a right to it, and that I'm not convinced it's a special circumstance. And I'm also troubled by the carving up into two pieces, because I don't know how different that, I mean, the basic approach of allowing a non-conforming use, essentially grandfathering it in, is because you're treating the parcel as a whole. And if there's a change to the parcel, then the parcel needs to come into compliance. So personally, I'm not convinced of the either the legal validity of that approach, or I'm troubled by the precedent that it might set. But on the other hand, I do think that these are, findings of facts that could be used to support a decision to approve the variance. And I do think that the addition of the housing is an important asset for the community. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I think your point for sure has a lot of validity because, over time, things change, communities become more and maybe mature in the way that they want things to be done. And that's why we have this review process. Again, same with like a site plan, they expire after 2 years, then you have to go back and if the code changes, you have to bring it back up to compliance to a degree or go through the variance process. I think the only concern that trying to get the existing parcel or the existing area of that parcel that's already there would mean dislocating people from some existing houses. And I don't think any of us want to say we're in support of that. So I don't know. Any other discussion?
So by just considering this western part that they're looking to expand, they're sort of getting a grace by not causing compliance with the trailer court to the east, right? So, I mean, I think we've seen a lot of proposals where we've had to apply that idea that when you're grandfathered in, when there's a change, and in this case, we're just saying we're not going to try to drag in the eastern part, but the western part needs to be in compliance with existing code. So, which I think denial or the approving the recommended denial, they just have to do it per code. It's not like you're saying you can't develop lots on this western part of it. You just might not be able to provide additional storage and oversized parking, and you have to put the fence on the west side with a landscape buffer. That's kind of what they would have to do, right?
Yeah,
So.
I think so. And it's part of our viewpoint in doing this is we can't consider economic impacts or benefits or anything, which is kind of unfortunate because anytime we do any engineering or anything, we consider the cost benefit analysis of something. And, we can look at this and there's so many lots and, it's lines on a paper from us, but the owner, they look at it and it might be, on the borderline of a go, no go, which we didn't have that information to say one way or the other. But, this proposal, if we don't approve it, the owner could say, well, it's not valuable enough for me to go in a different direction. So we're not going to do anything and leave it set where it is. And then we lose a number of housing opportunities for folks.
I think the point about the fencing too, as well, is that what was the intent of that in code? And I think the intent in code probably was to separate different types of housing, not the same. Like, for example, we heard another type of expansion of a community. I don't think there's a fence around that one, right? We don't have fences around subdivisions, I don't think required in the remainder, maybe we do.
Right. No, I
Yeah.
think,
So I think the spirit of that is more to intend, like if it was single family or other types industrial, I'm not sure, whatever the other uses were, not the same use. So I think that has a little bit of a different, needs to be interpreted in that way, because I think that's what code meant. I didn't write code, but I would
Right.
think that's what code meant.
I think, and I might be wrong, I don't know the code inside and out, but I do know if we have a subdivision next to like an arterial, and I'm thinking of like Vista Drive, there's a fence that separates that main road from the subdivision. But to your point, every time we see a subdivision come in or an additional aspect of that subdivision, we're not seeing a fence around it.
But then,
It's an interesting
maybe,
question.
maybe B bar B goes away, maybe they decide to not be a mobile home park anymore. And it is converted into single residences as a future land development. And you don't have the fence accomplishing that objective of different.
Right, but in that scenario, I think it would require either some sort of a site plan through the city, because you wouldn't be probably putting houses on little tiny slivers of a lot like that. But it's all hypothetical. Yeah. So I guess we've hashed this around enough. One way or the other, we need to make a motion on it. If we want to support it, like Sharon was saying, we've got to find findings of fact for all of these things. And going the other way is the easy way.
I don't know that we have enough information for findings of fact if we were to approve it. Do you think we've got enough to stand on those?
They were spelled out in this handout we got. So the applicant has provided findings of fact that would support approval, if you agree with those findings of fact.
Chair, if I could jump in just, and as you know, if you're reversing or not going with staff's recommendation and coming up with your own findings, we always recommend maybe postponing and putting together those findings that you all can agree on, rather than making them up tonight. So I'm just putting that out there.
So with that,
The owner would request that you make a decision tonight.
okay, that helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is more vulnerable. The decision would be more vulnerable if we didn't take a decision to approve without taking the time, as Philip suggested, would be more vulnerable to challenge. But I do think that the findings of that have been provided. I'm prepared to make the motion. I don't know how it's going to do, but just to move things forward, I'm prepared to make the motion as it was recommended to deny it. I can see how we vote on that and then go from there. That's one path.
Yeah, I mean, Chair, I'll stand for a motion one way or the other, however we want to go.
I move to deny the requested variance from Laramie Municipal Code sections 1514 140 A3. Oh wow, a whole bunch of numbers here. 1540 140 A4, 1514 140 A5, and 1514 140 B2, located on 2060 Franklin Street, based on findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Have a second.
Chair, if I could just clarify, 2260 Franklin Street, is that correct?
2260, correct.
Yes. We have a second.
Didn't we second?
No, second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Chair, please call roll, or Nancy, let's call the roll.
Butino,
Aye.
Bull, Heisler White. Moody.
Aye.
O'Toole.
Aye.
Schneider.
No.
Matamore, absent. That's 4 yeses, 2 nos, and 1 absent, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes in denial. So, okay, thank you. Next, item of business is variance 26 or VAR. It might be 8B VAR -26 -0003 2444 Overland metal siding variance request. Philip.
Yes, Honorable Chair. We usually try to split these variances up because they do have a lot of discussion, but fortunately it's just the way the cookie crumbles, right? So the second variance before you is for property located at 2444 Overland Street, and the applicant is requesting a variance from Laramie Municipal Code Table 1514-80-1 that have to do with residential design standards and allowable and prohibited materials in residential zoning districts. By way of background, the building permit for this project was issued on April 15th, 2025. Construction proceeded, and near the completion of the project, a building inspector identified that metal siding had been installed as one of the exterior siding materials. And as you'll see in table 1514-80-1, metal siding is not an allowable exterior material in residential zoning districts. The material that was installed was not the siding material shown in the approved building permit plans, and revised plans were not submitted for the building department to review prior to installation. Staff does recognize the applicant's concern regarding project completion and the cost and inconvenience associated with replacing material that has already been installed. I should say replacing prohibited materials that have already been installed. However, the variance criteria require that the board, as you well know, need to meet all of the findings of fact in order to grant the variance. So I'll jump through these findings and staff's opinion of those and recommendation, and then turn it over to you all. But finding A requires that there be special circumstances or conditions that are peculiar to the land or building that do not generally apply to other properties in the neighborhood. Staff does not find that this criteria is met. The request is not based on an irregular lot, unusual topography, narrowness, shallowness, or other physical condition unique to the property. Instead, the need of the variance arose because the siding material was installed that was different from the approved plans and was not reviewed or approved by the building department. Finding B requires that strict application of the code would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the land or building. Staff does not find that this criteria has been met because the property can continue to be used for residential purposes and the structure can still be completed using approved exterior materials that are allowed under the table mentioned before. Finding C is not applicable. Finding D requires that the adjustment be necessary for the reasonable use of the property and that the adjustment be the minimum necessary to accomplish that purpose. Staff does not find that this criteria has been met. The variance is not necessary for the reasonable residential use of the property because the home can be completed with compliant exterior materials. Finding E requires that granting the variance be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the code and not be injurious to the neighborhood and otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. This one, I'm not going to say that metal siding is going to be injurious to the neighborhood around it, but I will say that we do have residential design standards in place for a reason. Is to create some form of uniformity, some form of predictability of what your neighbor's house is going to look like in 50 years. And when the code was created with these residential design standards, metal siding just didn't really fit in with what the planning division and the city council of the day that approved this table thought that was appropriate in residential areas. So staff does not find that the criteria has been met for this finding either. As mentioned, the purpose of these standards is to provide consistency and compatibility. Granting the variance would allow a material that is expressly not permitted and would undermine consistent application uniformity, treating everyone the same way that find themselves with property in the residential zoning districts. Finding F, again, this one requires that the variance not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. You will see that you receive some positive comments from neighbors on this variance request, and that you can do with those what you will, right? However, we sent these letters out to approximately 30, 40 people, and you got a couple of letters in support of a variance. So I want to make that point as well. Staff notes that this particular action may not visibly alter the broader character of the community in a significant way, but we still remain concerned that approving the variance could create long-term risk by allowing a prohibited material that is expressly prohibited in code for residential areas. So in summary, staff finds that the request does not meet any of the required variance criteria in LMC section as is required for variances. The request is not tied to a unique physical condition of the property, strict and so forth, which I just said. And at the end of the day, this was work that was already completed, unfortunately, and the variance was asked for after the fact, not beforehand. I want to note that as well, which is unfortunate. So it is up if some of you have called and said you went by there. So it is 90%, 95%. There's a couple areas that aren't finished. So denying this request, as staff has recommended, would require the applicant to replace the exterior material with an approved material. So it would, it would certainly be an obstacle to overcome. However, we have code for a reason, to create uniformity, to create predictability, and so we stand by the recommendation that we've made and can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Phil? Yes, Don.
You want to go first?
Sure.
Oh,
I guess my question is this a variance? Like, I thought that a variance would be if they were going to use the material, they're proposing it, it would come to us for planning commission, we would consider it, and then we would approve or disapprove. Not at like after the fact allowance. Like if I start a business, build a business on my property and then I operate it, then can I get I guess I'm a little bit confused about the sequencing of variances and whether that's even an appropriate item for us to be considering, because isn't it a legal item at that point and not a variance anymore because they violated something? I guess I'm confused because, again, everything we've ever done and the definition of a variance, from my understanding, is a more future proposed use, like the trailer park.
Chair, through you, ideally, yes, the work would not be completed. However, this is an avenue for this body to approve the variance after the fact and allow this to happen. We've regularly heard variances, unfortunately, that come to us like this. And, the applicant states he unknowingly put this material up, which that it is what it is, right? However, it wasn't approved. Therefore, you are exactly right. We don't have to go. We don't have to go through this process, right? We could require the applicant. We could just say that this, upon final inspection, isn't going to be passed because of this siding, won't get a certificate of occupancy, won't be able to be lived in, all because of this. We could require the applicant to tear it all down, then request the variance. However, we are offering this opportunity for the applicant to go through the variance process in case this body can find that the criteria are met and continue on with the project. But we do unfortunately hear these after the fact regularly.
Great question.
Donna, you had a question.
So, Philip, why exactly does this property is near my house, and I thought it looks nice. It's good. It looks fine. Does the same? I'm just baffled by not wanting to have a high-end siding put up on a house, and I assume metal roofs are okay. Are they?
Chair, through you, a couple things there. One, it is clearly prohibited in the table, metal siding of any kind in this R1 neighborhood. So that's all I can say to that. The second point of your question, yeah, for roofs are a different story. That would be a roof, not an exterior facade material, because it does stay, I should have mentioned that, it is facade materials that table refers to.
It looks damn good to me.
And you're not the only one who thinks that. I mean, we have had other, and I want to make that clear that, you know, we have to make the recommendation I made because the code is as it stated. In order for that table to be changed, a text amendment would need to take place, which I'm not going to make any predictions on whether that it would be approved or not. But that's the proper process, is to say, hey, actually there are newer metal facade materials that do work in residential areas. Here's some examples, and the code could be changed in that manner. But as it's stated, we can't recommend approval of it because of it's prohibited across the board in residential.
It is prohibited as giving me flashbacks to Catholic school. How long would it take to change the code? I mean, realistically, are we talking about months, a year?
Yeah, so it is 3 readings by council, and then it is so it is generally the fastest pace we've seen is between 2 and 3 months, including public notice requirements and a hearing by this body, or rather the planning commission, and then 3 readings by council. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at 2 to 3 months at the fastest.
And realistically, 6 months?
I mean, it could be 6 months, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, Philip, I've got a question for you, and you've started to allude to it, but would the city planning staff support a text amendment that incorporated this, maybe with a little bit more, teeth to it?
Chair, I think we do live in a changing world, right? When it comes to materials that are being used. So I think we could definitely entertain a work session, perhaps, or that's a 4-letter word, right? We don't want any more work sessions. But oh yeah, you're here too. Sorry. But I certainly appreciate the fact that we're always in a changing environment in construction. So I don't see us expressly against the idea of new building materials being included in that table. No.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Chris.
So I think that the prohibition of metal siding is more aesthetic, that there's more variations of really poor metal siding versus really good metal siding. And what they have is excellent. It is really sharp looking. I love what they did with that. And so if you have a text amendment, you know, the thing to wrestle to the ground is how do you decide what's a good looking metal siding versus a bad looking metal siding? You go Australia with all the bright metal. It's difficult. It's very difficult. I am so conflicted because it looks so damn good. And whether if they had gone to the building department and said, this is what we want, do you think that the building department would have said, yeah, you can do that? I mean, it is what they would have proposed, i.e. what they put in, so egregious that the building department would have said, no, no, that's just, we're not gonna do it. Or they said, oh, yeah, you know, that looked pretty good, you know, and they would have got the approval anyways.
So Chair, through you, I mean, we've classified this, the building department as, and the planning department both view this as metal siding, which is the issue, which is why we're in front of you. It's not a different type of material. It's not separated in code anywhere that this is nicer metal siding and this is not. It's just metal siding across the board. So I can't say that the building department would have code to stand on to approve something, even if it was brought. They would have told them no, and they would have used an approved building material, right? That's what would have happened, and we wouldn't be in this process. But it's not differentiated, so no, I can't say that they would have supported it. No.
I'm just trying to figure out how to make this happen. You know, whether there's a fee, like a serious, you did really wrong fee of not, you know, getting approval for a change of material. Oh, by the way, do you know what the original material was that they were going to put on the house?
I'd defer to the applicant.
Yeah, but would there be any kind of penalty fee associated with something like this? Maybe getting to John's question of, instead of a variance, why not just, you know, penalize them somehow?
Well, don't we have metal siding in Laramie? I know we have like aluminum siding on homes, right? Bi-level. I grew up in a bi-level. It wasn't here in Laramie, but when did that go into effect? Do you know? I mean, was it with the 2010 code or whatever? So it's always
Chair, through you, yeah.
So everything predating that could have had and still does, because I'm pretty confident that there is some in Laramie.
Well, what they actually have in the code is metal siding with clapboard. So it would be a metal siding that has it looks like a lap straight bolt, you know, with the overlapping things, which you see a lot of. My house was aluminum sided with that sort of lap board look to it, and I think if they had put in a lap board metal, it would have been okay. But they're straight sheets. That's kind of a fine point, anyways.
So.
Jake, I think it'd be useful to hear from the applicant. I'd also like to ask, would this be doable? Because I'm just thinking, this is a nicely done job. And I would hate to see the siding be removed and then presumably dumped at considerable expense to either the homeowner or the contractor, or maybe they split the cost or whatever the hell. Is there any way in which, if planning would consider this, to change the code for this specific kind of high-end metal siding to let the siding stay up for 12 months or until a decision is made by city council?
Chair, through you, I think so. That's not something that we can support. And I'll tell you why. It's because there's a bigger issue at play here. Of course, the findings, all 6 of them cannot be met, right? But we as the planning division, as the code administration division, have to stick with what's approved. If we don't, because we caught this, right? A building inspector with routine inspections of the site caught this in time, and yeah, it's 90% done, not 100% done, right? So I would say by granting this or really trying to find a way to grant this, then we'd be sending the message that approved plans don't matter. And they do matter. That's why we have code and we have approved plans. And if you want to have something done differently, you can ask on the front end. Unfortunately, we're in this situation, but I could not support that. No.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Can we hear from the applicant? Please state your name.
Yes. Russ Spiker Miller, owner of Altitude Contracting, Chair, esteemed commissioners. The situation was a little bit interesting because what happened was we had no idea that was not something that was in the requirements for not having the metal siding. Matter of fact, we referred to the code administration. That's who I get my permits from. And the chief of the inspectors of that, which is Lucas Witt, was the one that was surprised by it as well. And came to me after the planning department said, hey, you cannot use this siding on here. They had to come and stop us. So that's the reason he said there was 95% done. We're almost finished with it. Okay. Had we known prior to starting that, now it was not on the drawings because it was supposed to be an addition that we put a 2-story addition on his house. And it was supposed to be just a matching. Well, the customer changed his mind, decided he wanted to do a whole house renovation, which there's 3 types of siding on it. There's actually rock on the bottom for full wainscot, and there's also wood exits all over the place. Okay, and then of course partial metal siding. That did not come to their attention. They said nothing to us during the process. We had multiple inspections. Okay, electrical, plumbing, all kinds of things in multiple places, because when you do a remodel, you have new construction on the outside, you have remodeling construction on the inside. So we had multiple times that they came there. Some of that material was already on the walls. They didn't know that. They found out that was a problem from the planning department. Said, hey, you can't put this on here. Then came and stopped us at the end. And that's the occurrence. I would have never put that on there had I known initially. We would have done something else. My client's very opt to, hey, what can we put on? Let's do something that's nice, strong, longevity, this kind of thing. And of course, metal fulfills those kind of things. That being said, when we got stopped, we can only get a CO. We can't finish. There's some paces to be done. The trouble was I didn't know. My code administration did not know, and that's where the problem was. What I suggest is that there's a few things that can't be used for siding. If the plan department has something changed, let's say 6 months from now, we add another unit of measure. We say, well, we can't use brick, whatever. That gets added to the list of things you can't put on an exterior. That should be then handed to the code administration and say, here's the things you can't put on the outside of this facade. If that's the case, then when I go and get a permit, I'll be handed those things, because it's very common for a model project for a customer to say, hey, you're in here, let's go ahead and do the kitchen too. Let's go ahead and add to the outside siding. Those kinds of things happen. There's no way for me to know. What I would have said to him was, hey, I can't do it. Well, I didn't know that. And that's the whole trouble with it. Otherwise, we would have gotten the variance prior to, like you guys were asking earlier, which certainly would have been. In this case, we would have just said, no, we'll do something else. So it's a combination of really a perfect storm. He changed. We didn't know. Even code administration didn't know. If my code administration would have known, I think it would have been a lot different ballgame, because they would have said something as soon as we started putting it up, because they came in multiple times for inspections.
Yeah, thank you. Questions? Yes, Chris.
What do you mean by code administration? Is this someone internal to your company?
No,
is this
code
the city?
The city code administration. Yeah, Lucas Wood is the head of it, and we have 2 inspectors, him and Bryce Lopez, and they come in and look at our work. That's who we go to, and we put in for a permit to do the renovation for the house. They approve what we have on there. On the drawing itself, it was match the existing siding. That's what we were going to do, because we were building onto the house.
What?
Match existing siding. I'm sorry, match existing siding, which means that our addition, which was fairly large and 2-story, we weren't going to match what was already there and just keep going around. He says, I really would like to make it look nicer, so we went the whole entire house. It's a change. Court administration's fine with that. We let them know where way we go, but.
So you told code administration
Absolutely.
that you were
Yep.
going to change your.
And we can't hide it. We're going all the way around the whole building when they're coming for inspection. So it's not like we're, getting by with something. As we're walking inside for an inspection for like gas, we had a couple of gas inspections because we had to do multiple piping in his house. Well, as they come in there, they're walking right past the outside. They were
And
putting on.
the siding is up.
And siding is up, yeah. The rock was going on, the siding was going on, some of the facades were going on. Well, if they don't say anything, we keep continuing to work. After the fact is where we did the variance at the very end because we thought this is kind of caught us all by surprise. I apologize. I did not know. My code administration did not know.
The city code administration.
The city code administration did not know. Lucas Witt will let you know that he was surprised by this as well. And he's the one that actually came to me and said, "You've got to stop."
Good question.
So kind of a mitigating circumstances in my case, I guess. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
When did you record or did you have any documentation of when the inspectors came and did not tell you to do any?
There should be a record. There should be a record of when they did a lot of the
Do you have
inspection.
your own records of
I
that?
don't have my own records of it now. I don't write down. I just call for an inspection. Hey, can you come and do the inspection? And then they come and do it and leave.
And the code, the people that were coming to visit for the inspections, they knew of this change in going from second story matching existing siding to something else.
That's correct, sir. Yeah, and they did it multiple times. Bryce and Lucas came both.
Do you have a question?
Chair, if I can jump in.
Yeah, Phil.
And this isn't generally how we like to do the setup where it's like both of us are, but I need to jump in just real quick because without documentation from Lucas Witt, the chief building inspector, that this type of material is approved, which I don't believe we have. He and his other building inspector are there specifically to look at other parts, as Russ mentioned, right? Electrical, stuff to do inside. And so I don't think this has any merit because it's still a prohibited material at the end of the day. There is no documentation approving this from our building department. I just want to make that clear.
I don't understand. What you say? There's no approval of the siding, is what you're saying, or no approval of?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the commissioners asked if there was any record from the building department asking or stating specifically that this type of siding was approved.
Oh, absolutely not.
This is where we need to keep the conversation through you, I think, so that it isn't a back and forth.
I apologize, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah,
Totally.
please
I need to
address
say
the-
through you, through chair.
Yeah, I mean, we've got this back and I think it's our job to listen to, everybody's point of perspective and point of view.
Yes, sir.
And I think as long as we're cordial about it, we can go about it however we can. But I guess, Philip, a question to you. I'm kind of because I don't have the plans in front of us, but it said match existing siding. Was the existing siding metal siding? No, it wasn't. So what was presented on the plans to the city was not ultimately what was built. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
I don't claim to have asked for that. That's not the issue. The issue was that we changed. We did not know that we couldn't change to that midstream, and then they saw it, didn't realize it because they didn't know, and then found out later.
Right.
That's the scenario.
Right. Yeah.
Circumstances are weird, is what they end up being in this case.
Right. Do we have any other questions for the applicant? Any? Sharon?
So in your cover letter, the siding is described as a combination, and this is the overall siding. I think you were talking about the different types of siding. Is a combination of Versetta stone, tongue, and groove blue stain pine and pro panel. What percentage of the overall, just roughly, is the propane? I mean, is it like 75% or 15%?
50, I would say maybe.
It's 50 to
maybe,
70.
Yeah, 50, maybe 60, yeah,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
So it's, yeah, it's not a small piece of
No,
the
no,
site.
it's a substantial. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions from the applicant? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I guess that's all we have. Questions for you. Are there any other comments?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Sharon does have one more question.
I just wanted to check with you in terms of if we do have to make findings of fact and conclusions of law to support a decision. So if we make a different decision than what's recommended, there is reason to postpone to make sure we have time to do that and make a valid decision. Is that something that you would be willing to consider postponement of making a decision on this point until the next meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
You would be willing to?
Through you, sorry, through you, sir.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's all. Do we have any other comments, public comments? Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Could you restate your name, please?
Brian Hewlin.
Brian.
Yeah, the homeowner at 2444. I had a few items I was going to hand out. I don't have one for everyone, but it's the letter basically signed from all of my immediate neighbors, talking about how they like the design. And then there's some close-up photos so you can kind of understand the percentage that the Pro Panel covers for the entire build. Much of what Russ said, I'm not going to rehash, but I've been an engineer for 30 years, and I travel the world in the military. So I've been in for 26 years, and Pro Panel is something that I've seen all over Europe. It's what I've seen all over the Middle East as well. So when we started to look at it and recognizing that the original designs do talk for like siding, what I had on there, the house was built in 1984. It had horrible lap siding. One of the photos on there can show you the original house that I started remodeling in 2003, I think. But oil dipped shakes, cedar shakes, very difficult to find, very difficult to match. And so that's what really kind of started the conversation. Hey, what can we look at? And then when I looked at my experience, what I've seen overseas, what I know as an engineer, I immediately went to Russ about the metal siding. So that's where it really came from. There was no indication that that was a prohibited item. You can drive all over my neighborhood. There's not two single houses in my neighborhood that are similar, not two. There are cinder block buildings. There are aluminum siding. There is a brick two-story that was down here on Ivinson back in the 70s that was moved. That's two houses over. There are no two similar houses in my neighborhood, which is great. When I first looked at Pro Panel, it is given the top durability code on the International Building Code, which is something I'm really super familiar with. So from my perspective, I never would have thought Laramie would have fallen inside of the International Building Code. So to think that that was outside code was kind of caught me off guard. And then I talked to one of the city engineers who's no longer down there and talked to him about how Laramie nests in the larger building code things. And he's like, yeah, we typically fall inside International Building Code. So to me, I had no indication that this would be outside. And then with the permits or the inspections coming in, I talked to a couple of the inspectors. So it was there. It was in front of them. As an engineer, when I go to inspect one item, I don't just look at the one item. I look at the collective. That's what an engineer does. And that's what a guy in the military does as well. So, the industry standard for weather, specifically the top code for industry standard for weather exposed structures, which is what I went after because I am facing to the southwest, the big open field that's between Corthell neighborhood and the 15. I do get pounded by the wind in the winter, which is why I've done a lot of landscaping on the backside. But when you look at Pro Panel, it is rated for 50 to 70 years of durability. It has the lowest maintenance cost and the highest durability of any building material out there. And so under International Building Code, to me, it was a no-brainer. So that's kind of what drove me to that conversation. And I did, in 2007, I did lose that roof to the tornado that came through in 2007. I didn't get a direct hit, it was just across the road, but based on the hail and the winds, I lost that. So that's what drove me to the steel siding and the roof as well. So just wanted to throw that up there.
Okay. So, all right. Thank you. Do we have any questions for? Or...
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It seems to me as though, although I'd like to hear from the code inspector folks or folk, it seems to me the city owns a bit of this. It should have been caught. And I really, when I hear, the rules is the rules, and as I say, I heard that a lot in Catholic school. Sometimes stupid shit happens, and I think we need to show a little bit of flexibility. This looks like if we basically go with planning's recommendation, we're imposing a lot of cost on someone who acted in good faith and an honest mistake, and someone in inspection, is that the term? In code enforcement, who missed something that should have been obvious. And it's not anybody's fault. Stuff happens, but I would be very loath to go with planning on this. What I would suggest is we postpone and we hear from the code folks who visited the property, or at least hear from them either in writing that they did go to the house, they did inspect the house, and they missed something that they should have known. And it's otherwise somebody's going to spend a lot of money. It's going to waste a lot of money, and that seems unnecessary.
I guess, Philip, is that something that would be reasonable to get either a note from either Bryce or Lucas indicating something like that, or have them come down here and share their opinions or their thoughts with us? I know it doesn't comply. It still doesn't comply with code, and we have to, work through all of these findings of fact. But is that something that would potentially be possible?
Honorable Chair, I would say there's two things at issue here, and I think you mentioned them quite well. The criteria still need to be met, regardless of if something was missed or not.
So can I ask you a question on that? Based on the findings of fact, we as the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment, we are not sort of appointed this position as expert witnesses or experts or any of this. We're just supposed to act with, as reasonable lay people, give or take, based on our experiences, maybe not our professions, though those definitely influence us. Our findings of fact can be based upon that and not specifically code related. Can they be subjective to our interpretation?
So, Chair, again, I would say, for one, I want to go back very quickly to my previous statement. I'm not admitting that the code inspectors missed anything. I don't have any record. The applicant has provided no record of any dates or anything that was said, written or otherwise, that this was approved, right? So I just want to make that clear that our building inspectors are out every day. We are down to 2 building inspectors where we should have 4. We're budgeted for 4. They are going from project to project. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because they are looking at what they are going to inspect, right? So when I understand, you know, when I'm going to, but they're not going to one house a day. They're going to like 12 a day, right? So anyway, I just want to go back to my previous statement that saying even if something were missed, I'm not saying something was missed. So anyway, to that point, as far as subjectivity to this, the risk you run to the findings, the risk you run there is the legal risk of are your findings going to hold up if this decision is appealed?
Right. So on that, on the appeals, as I understand it, the appeals of a planning commission decision or a board of adjustment decision is only procedural. It's not on the subject matter. Because again, that goes back to what I was saying. We're not, appointed based on our occupations or our professions. We are supposed to be acting as community people, right? As lay people from lay people's perspective. I mean, we have, Sharon, you're a lawyer, I'm an engineer, geologist, veterinarian. They all kind of, and I'm sorry, I don't know what you do, Jenna. But it all kind of informs our decisions, if you will. But we're not expected to act in the same capacity on the planning commission or the board of adjustment as I am like when I'm working under my engineering stamp. It's totally different ballgame, right? So to your point, for it to be challenged could be possible, but it's only a procedural challenge that can be brought. Did we follow the laws or the rules of like Robert's rules to get something to a decision? Am I incorrect?
Well, I think we do have the criteria and they spelled out. So but we may have a different view of whether the criteria for granting a variance have been met. And that's why I would also recommend that we postpone. And then the question is, and we might just want to at least have a brief discussion of it now, looking at those criteria, the six of them, and they that's in the staff report. I think if I recall correctly, the staff report finds that none of the criteria are met. For us to then that justifies denial. For us to approve the variance, all of the criteria have to be met. But we could postpone and then take the time and I don't know if the staff would be interested in working with us or not, but we have to come up with findings of fact and conclusions of law to support the decision to approve it.
Okay, thank you.
Sharon, and through you to Commissioner Buccino, I would say that our stance likely will not change on what we're recommending.
And you can, and this is discussion among us, you can completely understand the position that the planning staff is taking because of the need of the integrity to enforce the process. But that's why there's a larger group of us with diverse viewpoints to then factor in these other factors. But the factors that we have to consider are those ones that are spelled out in the municipal code for granting a variance. I would like to just take a few minutes to quickly look at those together and see if there's a likelihood that there is agreement that those factors could be met in this case. We don't have the benefit of what we had before where the applicant spelled them out. But if we feel like they can be met and the work for us to do, and I'd be prepared to take a crack at drafting it is to be able to hear it again and consider at that time specific findings of fact and conclusions of law that support granting a variance. And that's the process you were recommending that we follow, that we don't act on it now without those findings of fact when we were discussing the previous matter.
Chair, through you to Commissioner Buccino, I think a cursory review of if any of the finding or if all of the findings, right, could be met is probably not a bad exercise. And if there is some footing there that you all can agree to. I think there's a path forward for postponing. So,
okay, thank you. So I guess to that end, I think I'm looking at these right. So Philip, correct me if I am wrong or confirm that I'm right. Under page 2, item A, those are the conditions, correct? It's item A, item B, item C, D, E, and F. Those are the bold items, or the bold text rather, are the items that we need to find findings for if we're going to try and support this. Is that correct?
yeah, that is correct.
Thank you. So item A then is there are special circumstances or conditions which fully describe in the board's findings that are peculiar to the land or building for which the adjustment is sought and do not apply generally to land or buildings in the neighborhood and have not resulted from any act of the applicant subsequent to the adoption of code, such as irregularity, narrowness, or shallowness of lot or exceptional topographical conditions.
And I'd be open to, I mean, now that the applicant is here and has seen these finding effects, I mean, he may have some viewpoints. He didn't really spell them out in his cover letter, but I don't know.
Just a comment. I think A is the toughest haul, but the applicant made a point that his house is exposed, and when you go to it, it's open land to the west of him, and if he wants the highest quality, most durable, most windproof, long-term material on his house that is exposed to the Wyoming winds and so forth and sun, and I mean that might be
if you were contriving a variance to get something moved through.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're describing, I agree, but so is every other home on the block. Like, I thought that the conversation.
Not necessarily, it's right on the edge.
More towards holistically approving that as a building material, because, you know, we've talked in many meetings about, is this a systemic change that is needed, or is it truly a special set of circumstances? And the fact that there's some breakdowns in communication is not the special set of circumstances. So I think we just have to be careful in contriving a situation that to me feels like.
Without really working hard to try to contrive something, you're going to have a hard time meeting A, and we're wasting our time to try to so.
And like, I mean, B says the circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application of the provisions of the code would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of such land or building. Not really.
No.
And if we can't meet that one, then we don't, as much as we might want to grant a variance, we don't have a legal basis for doing it.
Yeah. A, B, and D are tough hauls. But to John's point in the very beginning, well, I mean, of saying, is this really not a Board of Adjustment issue, you know, as opposed to getting the city and the applicant to work something out? If that's a compromise of sorts, or gosh, we could have, it was, as Donald said, it was an innocent, these were all innocent, perfect storm of events. And, you know, just can come up with something reasonable that isn't codified.
And you know what, just thinking through the whole like long-term process and viewports, what would really be unfortunate is if we deny this variance and then in a year this type of same building materials back on the list, and you know, we're following what we're supposed to do and there's no way around it, and then the building materials change and then allow it.
Chair, if I could jump in, I think some middle ground here. I mean, you can't really add a condition to a disapproval, right? But I think with the flexibility that the code administration department has, I think we could, in writing, put something down that said, we're not going to require you to replace this siding until after a text amendment process that you bring forward as kind of this systemic change that was referred to in addressing the bigger issue. Because I think the points brought forward are great, right? It's durable. It's just not allowed. It's prohibited, right? We can't just allow it, right? But I think there are some very good arguments to be made to include this type of material, and then it would be up to city council to address that. And I think, we could easily put something in writing that said, if it works with kind of the exterior of the house staying that way for, up to 6 months, right? I mean, that's another thing. But I think there is some middle ground there. I think we can work with the applicant by, if they want to have this material and they're willing to go to another process to make it an allowable material in residential, then yes, we deny that the variance is denied, but then we're not going to come over there and rip the materials down tomorrow, right? We could wait till.
So it would be like a conditional denial?
No, I think it wouldn't come.
I
It
think
wouldn't.
we just, we either postpone it or we deny it. I don't feel like we have the basis to approve.
Yeah, so it would be more like a denial, but then on the backside, the building department would work through some terms.
Yeah, I mean, it's still
something, but it would still be an unapproved material with the potential that if it never was adopted by the city, it would have to be replaced.
Well, so the risk that the applicant runs by having this material, getting this variance denied, and then not taking it down, are that the project won't be finalized, right? It won't be CO'd essentially. I mean, what take that as it is, right? But given the 6-month time frame of doing a text amendment, hopefully sooner, right? Then an approved material could be placed and there wouldn't be further penalty put on the applicant until the result of a text amendment addressing residential facade standards was done.
Yeah, I guess we don't want to hear from the applicant again and see if that's. Yeah. Please come up here and give us your perspective on what Philip had just mentioned.
Thanks, sir. We were not trying to set a precedent by any means. Once again, the use of this material is not. We're not trying to push through and make a change to the code. It was, and I'm totally with Philip on the fact that we've only got 2 inspectors. It wasn't that they were overworked. They do a great job. As a matter of fact, I have nothing but praise for our guys that are doing it, which is there's only 2 of them, Bryce and Lucas. Lucas is the one that openly admitted that he did not know about that. That's the whole thing behind this. If he doesn't know, then of course I don't know. And that will cause a whole problem. So I'm not here to try and push through a change to the code.
I guess I'll go back to what the whole discussion here is we're trying to find a way to move this forward.
Thank you, sir.
To make you not have to rip it out. And that seems to be, if I'm not mistaken,
sounds like a 6-month and then rip it out.
But it seems like it's pretty close to the only avenue we have, because based on code and based on what we have to do as a planning commission to find findings of fact and conclusions of law is going to be very difficult.
The city really does, as one of your commissioners said, the city does own some of this. I mean, Lucas should be asked this question.
I don't disagree, but you've heard the saying that ignorance of the law is no excuse. I think it goes both ways.
Okay.
Right.
So if he doesn't know, then I didn't know either.
I hate to say that, but I think that's probably true. And at the end of the day, we still have to find these conclusions to some degree to be able to support and pass and approve a variance. And I think what Philip is offering is an alternative way to do that. It'll take a little longer, of course, but it would require changing code as a text amendment to allow that. Is that portion of the code, Philip, is that just a table of approved uses? So it would just be an additional line in that code that would have to go through the readings. Is that correct? Yeah. So it wouldn't be a tremendous undertaking to be able to do that. It would just be an extensive timeline. It would be an much more extended timeline than the variance that is potentially seemingly not going to find legs.
Okay,
So.
thank you, sir.
So, and I guess with that, I didn't get an answer from you, but is that text amendment something that you, as the applicant and then the owner, would be in support of if it meant delaying the CO for another 4 to 6 months? Or would the option of denying it, ripping the siding off and putting an approved siding on be a better option?
Yeah, I'm good to wait till 6 months and try to move it forward.
Okay.
The one question I would ask right now is we're not complete, and what that means is I have exposed wood, I don't have gutters, so when it rains or snows.
Right.
He's only got a little teeny bit to do. It's like 8 pieces.
I don't know.
Right. I think that's something that the building department would have to work through with you guys based on this and based on something that I don't know how we would do that from the planning commissions or the Board of Adjustments perspective, Philip, but how would that work? What do we need to do today as the Board of Adjustment to be able to give maybe direction, if that's the right word, to the building department to work through something so that they can finish closing up the house, seal it up, and then start the process of the text amendment?
Well, Chair, I want to be very clear that we're not making any promises tonight as to a decision on a text amendment either. And I think we're all clear on that, but it just needs to be said. I think there's two options. I think one is to deny the variance based on the findings of fact not being met tonight. I think the second option is to postpone it to a undetermined date. And I don't know if that's okay, if we have to set a date to be postponed to.
So in a motion, I believe, Chair, we could postpone until after the city council has had opportunity to review a text amendment. And that doesn't give us a specific date, but it also doesn't take it totally out of the books. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we can work with that.
And Chair, just to add again, I want to be completely clear that, you know, I think we're all in the same boat. We run the risk of finishing the project and then it's still not being passed, right?
Correct. Right. I think
we're all,
that's, yeah, because the text amendment is not a guarantee that it will be passed. It's just another avenue that I guess potentially could delay the replacement of the siding, but also has the opportunity that it could stay. So I think we're trying to find a middle ground to be able to find an alternative way to allow that siding that's been installed to remain. But it's not a guarantee. I'm sorry, Nancy, yes.
No, you're totally fine. Chair, I was, to your question about can you direct the building staff, code administration staff. I don't know that that's the purview of this board. So that's all I wanted to say on that,
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Speaks for itself, but I think we have, the action for us is either to deny variance based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law that they've given us, or postpone the matter. And we were given a phrasing of to postpone it until the time until a time during which the council has a chance to consider it.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I guess with that being said, is there any other discussion amongst the commission? And if not, I guess I will entertain a motion.
The motion. I haven't done.
I'm sorry. Did I ask for public comment on this yet? I think I did.
Yeah, Brian came up during.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Public comment.
Okay. So we're good to proceed.
Okay, we're gonna try it. I'd like to make a motion to postpone variance VAR -26-0003 2444 Overland metal siding variance based on findings of fact and law until city councils have the opportunity to review a text amendment to LMC 15.14.080-1 residential design guidelines.
Does that work for you, Philip? Good. Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Jenna. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Nancy, will you please give us a roll call?
Utino.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, this voting block has old names on it. Hold on, give me one second. Bull. Heisler White. Moody.
Aye.
O'Toole.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
And Matamore is absent. So that's 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passed, and that variance has been tabled until such time the city council gets a text amendment. So that being said, the applicant would suggest you would work with the planning department to kind of start the process to understand what a text amendment includes so you can get
Chair,
rolling. Yes.
Sorry, I should have caught this, but we had no time period included in the motion.
We did. It was until
Indefinitely. I mean, that it's
Yeah, there was a milestone of the city council reviewing that section of code.
but there was none, there was no date that the applicant was required to file a text amendment or anything like that. So I'm not sure how we go back and do that, but we'd feel much more comfortable if we had a date in mind because there's really no.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, there's no date, or the actual text amendment to be heard.
I see what you're saying.
So how do we?
So I don't know if you've done this before, but it would be a motion to reconsider. And so you would bring that item back to the floor. And it would be somebody that voted in favor, which is the board, minus the one that's absent. So any of you could make a motion to reconsider variance 26-0003. And then at that point, the motion comes back on the floor, and then you would then make an amendment to the motion to then add it.
So Philip, just to be clear, what you're asking for is a time frame on the applicant to submit that.
Correct. And we would like a 2 month, 2 to 3 months max. So I would say I would recommend 3 months.
Okay.
Well, it's just the period. It needs to submit it to you. So start the ball rolling.
Okay. Okay, so we need a motion to.
I will move to reconsider the action taken on variance -26-0003.
Second. Okay, moved in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Then I will offer an amendment. Would it be best though if I restate the action that we would be taking?
I think for the record, just to be clear, that would be great.
Okay. So, my amended action, would be to postpone variance -26-003 2444 Overland metal siding variance request to a date after the city council has had a chance to review a text amendment. And also, the applicant of this variance has submitted a proposed text amendment by June, October 1st. Well, let's say August. No, we're at 3 months. 3 months. They have most 3 months. So August. Let's not make it on Sunday or Saturday. August 15th. That's the little bit what that would be. It's just a table. Why not a month? Okay. 2 months. Yeah. Okay. So how about July 20th? That's a Monday. Could you read that back to us, maybe?
Oh, you're asking a lot. Yeah. So no, so it's the motion that was previously stated and then adding the applicant must submit a proposed amendment by July 20th, 2028. There's two. Or 26, sorry. I don't know why I wrote 8 in my notes. Yes, 2026. I was at the edge of the page. It kind of ran off.
There are two conditions to the postponement, and one is the
City
end of
council.
the original. The city council has a chance to consider a text amendment, and the applicant has submitted a proposed text amendment to the planning department no later than July 20th, 2026.
Okay. Are we good for a second?
I'll second.
Yes. Okay. Okay, been moved in second. Do we have a roll call, please?
Chair, it would be appropriate, since this is an amendment, to accept public comment on the amendment.
Okay.
before we-
Okay. Do we have any public comment on the amendment? Yes, sir. Can you please come? State.
Be deployed with the military the whole month of July. Could we slip that into August?
That's as good a reason as any. So, yes, sir. I believe so.
I didn't
So
think it.
we could probably
Okay,
restate that.
we're gonna amend the.
Amend the
Amend your
amendment.
amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Which date in August would be appropriate?
I actually return on the 26th of July, so it could be the last week of July.
Oh, so you missed it by
Just
6
so
days.
the applicant's clear though, this is not when it's going to be heard. This is when you have to apply.
Correct, right. You have to have
And
it to the
So I don't
planning
need to be
department.
here.
You don't have to be here for
Yeah,
anything.
you just have to have the application in by that date.
Scratch what I said
Okay.
then. I thought I had to be here. So.
No, sir. I don't believe so. It just has to be submitted to your department by that date.
By that date, and then the public hearings wouldn't be until, I mean, we could work with you on your return when that's going to be.
Okay.
That'll work, sir.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Can we please have the roll call?
Butino,
Aye.
Bull,
Aye.
Heisler White,
Aye.
Moody,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Matamore absent. That's 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Chair,
Yes.
I apologize, but we've just amended the main motion, so now we do need to go back to the main motion.
Okay. So now we need a motion on the main or a vote?
So we're back to the main motion as it had previously been approved.
Okay.
To postpone.
Okay.
So, it's the original postponement, that was made by Kendra.
Okay.
And stuff. So now it's just approving as amended to add in the applicant's opportunity
Okay.
or the time.
And we need a motion for that.
It's already been made, so we're back to reconsidering that main motion,
Okay.
but we do need to re-vote on that main motion.
Okay, very good.
So-
Is there any other discussion on that first motion? Or can we have a vote? Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Butino,
Aye.
Bull, Heisler White,
Aye.
Moody,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye,
and Matamore absent. That's 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Chair.
thank you. Motion passes. Can we now adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is concluded. Thank you all.